Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karawawahai Tejaswina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishawahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be nurtured together. May we be nourished together. May we strive together. May our learning shine. May we not quarrel. Peace. Continuing from the last week, without looking necessarily at the answers, let's just get into a flow. Just some revision of chapter 2, which we're now coming out of, called Sankhya Yoga, which is a vision of the entire Bhagavad Gita. And this reference guide, the Holy Gita reference guide, has a few points which I circled that is worthy just as a reminder because of the benefit of revision. So without looking at the answers, let's first discuss what we, from our knowledge, think these answers are, and then we will read what the original says. So here we have the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the two sides in the Kurukshetra, on the battlefield of the Gita. The Kauravas are on that side and the Pandavas are on this side, whichever way you look at it. What is the Pandavas a metaphor for? That's a question. The Pandavas, what are they a metaphor for? Remember, Arjuna is on the side of the Pandavas. What do the Pandavas represent, a symbol of?
Is it the good in us?
Yes. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? What does it mean to say good? What does good mean?
It's the striving to be good, the impulse to do good.
Okay. Yeah. How about principles which we inherently know within us to be right, yet we cannot fully quantify why they are right, but we know they're right? What about the good which says, how would I want to be treated as a human being is how I treat others as a human being. It's called Dharma. So the good in us, which we all know to be good. And how do we know what is good? Very easy. You ask yourself, would I want to be respected? Would I want to be loved? Would I want to be acknowledged? Would I want to be included? Would I want to be hurt? You know the answer to every one of these questions instantly. You don't have to be born and be taught this knowledge. You know Dharma instantly. It is inbuilt into the time of creation what is right. So, the question is now, if I don't want to be hurt, if I don't want to be lied to, cheated, taken advantage of, would then another person want to be lied to, cheated, taken advantage of? No. Instantly you know the answer to that. That is the Pandavas. The Pandavas within us which knows inherently what is right. Now the Kauravas, what are they a symbol of? I mean, good is on one side, it couldn't be one other option.
Yeah.
That?
Materialism and everything.
Very good. Yeah, it's a good start of the conversation. The material, Adrian said. Now, who can elaborate on the material? Why would the material necessarily? I mean, we don't need that in the material as in your money and your evil. But what about material that would subscribe to the definition of the Kauravas? What about material? Who can elaborate on that, please?
The lust for power, control, status,
right.
manipulation, yeah.
Good.
To obtain something essentially material, probably.
Good, yeah.
So to balance that, so there's greed.
Yes.
Really driving that.
Very good.
Producing injustice.
Yeah, those two qualities, greed and injustice, they especially represent the Kauravas. So, for example, the Kauravas, they wanted to take everything from the Pandavas, and they couldn't get enough. They wanted to take more. They took the city, they took the power, they took the ownership of the land, everything, and they could not say no. So that is that greed, the never-ending, unsatisfied appetite for material, as he said. Yeah. So here it says the negative and the divine tendencies, respectively, in human beings. So the Kauravas, the negative, and Pandavas, the divine tendencies. Now we sort of addressed, generalized what they could mean, so we don't have to go further into that. Okay. Let's see what is dharma, because it's a common word in Vedanta. Now, without reading, what is dharma so far as we learned and covered in this course? Whatever words, the very easy way to answer is just start with one word and then see how it just turns into a conversation. Give me one word for dharma.
Tendencies? Tendencies?
Tendencies.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Tendencies. Like which ones? Give me an example. Tendencies like in respect to dharma. Remember dharma? Okay, what does dharma mean?
That which upholds and sustains.
Hey?
One definition, that which upholds and sustains.
That which upholds and sustains what?
Morality.
Yep. And nature of what is upheld and sustained. So that means the nature of a tree is the dharma of a tree is to be a tree. It upholds and sustains itself as a tree. It doesn't try to be a flower. In other words, dharma is that which is the nature of that. What is the nature of the sun? We all know the answer, right? What is the nature of wind? Yeah. So the dharma of wind is to blow. The dharma of, let's say, the light bulb is, at least when we press it on, I mean, it's a little tricky one, is to shine. So dharma is that which represents the inherent nature of an object in question. If the question of object is a person, then you have to ask yourself, what is it that makes a person a person? We just spoke about, in the previous question, the Pandavas, morals, virtues. So that means if morals and virtues are excluded, then dharma is lost. We call that adharma, not dharmic. Stealing, cheating, lying. Is stealing, cheating, lying dharma of a person? No. Why? Simple answer. Do you want to be cheated, lied to, or stolen from? No. So that means when there is violation of dharma, that which upholds or sustains what is in question, in this case a person, then there is suffering, there is damage, there is collapse, there is negation of principles which uphold the entire society. So whenever a culture in total loses dharma, starts to lose their, or creates a distance between what I am versus what I am not, the society collapses. And we've seen this over and over again. Where are all of these civilizations which we have known for? The Aztecs, the Persians, the Egyptians, the Mayans, where are they now? The Romans, where are they now? Dharma lost little by little, it collapses. Okay, let's read. The term dharma is one of the most intractable. What does intractable mean?
Can't move it.
Okay. Intractable terms in the Hindu philosophy. It actually comes from the Hindu philosophy, the Vedas. Derived from the word dhar, to uphold, sustain, support, it denotes that which holds together the different aspects and qualities of an object into a whole, like a tree. Ordinarily, Dharma has been translated as religious code, as righteousness. That's the common translation. Dharma equals righteousness. As a system of morality, as duty, as charity. Like my Swadharma is to be an accountant, your Swadharma is to be a doctor, and so on. It's not all there is to Dharma. So let's see what it says. But the original Sanskrit term has a special connotation of its own, which is not captured by any one of these renderings in the common world speak of Dharma. The best rendering of the true of this term Dharma is the law of being. Dharma, law of being. Meaning that which makes a thing or being what it is. For example, it is Dharma of fire to burn, sun to shine, wind to blow, cat to meow, dog to bark, snake to psst. Dharma means, therefore, not merely righteousness or goodness. It indicates the essential nature of anything in question, of anything.
Could you say its correct function?
Its correct function, that's right. Okay, we will take that one step further as we finish this, how it applies to humans. For example, a cold dark sun is impossible. You cannot have a cold dark sun. As heat and light are the dharmas of the sun. Similarly, if we are to live as a truly dynamic man, woman in the world, we cannot only do so by being faithful. We can only do so by being faithful to our true nature. And the Gita's job, which we are discussing, is to explain to me my Dharma. Explain to you your Dharma. That's the only job of the Gita. It's a Dharma Shastra, a Shastra of how to live as a honorable, respectable, fine, moral, virtuous man, woman in this world, but also a section 2 Moksha Shastra, how to gain self-knowledge and understand oneself as Sarvam Brahmaha, that I am the whole. So, now, as we said, what did you say just a little bit earlier? It was a statement, that which is correct, something that is correct.
Yeah, it's really whatever the object or the person is.
Okay, good.
The correct function, which is
good.
how I understood it was.
Okay. Now, for the sun, it's impossible to be cold and dark. But when it comes to human being and we add choice, free will, we can be anything, can't we? So that's where Dharma is breakable through free will. Now, how do we know that we've broken Dharma? Well, what does Dharma mean? That which upholds or sustains an object, whatever the object in question is. So if that object is no longer upholding or sustaining its nature, what happens? Well, there's a dis-ease in the environment. There's a sense of disbalance. If a tree tried to pretend like it's a rose, something would be wrong with the tree. You will know it instantly. If a person refuses to be a person, a dharma of a person, honest, loyal, open, friendly, there is always dis-ease whether the human being knows about it or not. That is our privilege. That we can look at our dharma through our ability of self-consciousness and say, is this right? That's why human beings are the only ones who can use the last stage, moksha, to discover their nature. Because an animal cannot say, what is the nature of reality. But at the same time, an animal cannot break dharma. Because it's a program, right? It's a program. It's programmed to do what it does. So that's why a lion can kill an antelope. A lion doesn't get arrested. Why? Because we inherently know that lion had no choice. But as soon as you put a person, a poacher, you call him a poacher with a gun, instantly we have some thoughts about that because we know inherently that person had a choice. You know, and they took a life of an animal who had no choice. We know there's something off about that. You see? So that's our privilege of Dharma. Okay, Shravana, 3 stages of Vedanta. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasanam. So, I don't need to ask for this because we haven't really covered, so we're just going to reiterate what Shravana is. So, Vedanta, to be successful for anyone, whether you are a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, been in this world for decades, done all the meditations there are to do, it doesn't really matter. End of the day, this journey actually never ends until the day we die. So that's just the nature of human beings, because we're totally adaptable and flexible to the environment, which is why Shravana, like with anything, we suspend our notions aside, which we have picked up, and as Gareth said last week, I think, have faith in the teaching, that there is something about the teaching which is worthy of listening to and paying attention and applying. That's Shravana. It's the hardest stage, because listening is very hard, isn't it? I know too much. I know something better, sounds much better than this. That's going to override the teaching, and the Vedanta is not going to work. Okay, so Shravana is just listening with faith, in summary. Now, Manana. Manana, here it says, Manana, okay, reflection. That's just a simple word, reflection. So what does reflection mean? Reflection means, in the light of the teaching acquired in Shravana, I take that and I contemplate that until all doubts are removed. In other words, I reflect reality, my experience, in the light of the knowledge gained in stage 1 Shravana. Okay? Just like in school. You go to school and you listen. How else are you going to do it? You don't argue. And if you do argue, then the teacher's going to scold us, isn't it? So just like anywhere else, we first listen. And then in the light of the knowledge, can we take that home or into the real life world and contemplate what is reality? But now we have something that we didn't have before, knowledge. So that's what reflection means. And finally, Nididhyasana is the 3rd stage. You don't have to go to Nididhyasana, it's not necessary, but most of us choose to, because life doesn't have such thing as called an end. It's not so that we gain self-knowledge, we're totally certain, I am unconditional, non-dual, ordinary, conscious love awareness, and so I can just pack up my things and just go home. It's not like that. In fact, there's nothing more dualistic than that phenomenon of thinking. So that means Nididhyasana is, if the knowledge or the fruit of knowledge gained in Manana has not been fully fructified, then you got work to do. Because a lot of us, especially in Vedanta, we do have a lot of knowledge, and we're not beginners. I know that, because Vedanta, to be in here, you got to know a lot, actually, or be very mature to be accepting this. That means if we don't fully accept, or the knowledge of I am Brahman, it doesn't fully register, there's no depth to that, there are still obstacles present. I said, usually from childhood. Childhood issues, by the time we're 6, most of our life is already laid out, because we're in just total theta state by the time we're at age 6. We're just absorbing like a hypnotic machine. So if our parents certainly put certain suggestions about how reality is or what love is, then we're just going to carry that for the rest of our lives, and we have to clear that out in Nididhyasanam. So that means in stage 2 Manana, if Vedanta hasn't done the job, you then go to Nididhyasana, which you still continue your inquiry using Vedanta knowledge, but also you can now go to certain modalities which are present in the self-help world and use them to help you to release some tensions, some blockages, some inconveniences. Yeah. So see, this journey doesn't really ever end, because see, we don't settle for anything less than who we inherently know ourselves to be. which is what? Free of defects. That's what consciousness is. It doesn't have any defects. You can't help it. That's why we're always striving for something that is even more expensive. Yeah. Now, I've got to make a little point here, is that self-knowledge, moksha, means is that I am happy with the apparent negatives and the apparent positives. That's why I said at the beginning, you don't necessarily have to go to stage 3, nididhyasanam, because that implies there's still a jiva which I'm identified with. So it's not black or white, you see? Okay. What are the 2 expressions of Maya? Very important. 2 expressions of Maya. Self, Maya. Maya means what?
Illusion.
Illusion, good. What else is Maya? In the light of the teaching?
Reflected awareness?
No. Maya means, okay, we have stage 1. There's no such thing as stage, but I'm just going to quantify it as a stage. Stage 1, consciousness. Stage 2, Maya. Now, stage 3, Ishvara. So that means Maya is unmanifest. It's a power in consciousness. So what is Maya?
Is it Maya that does the projecting?
That's right. It's in unmanifest mode. Only when it manifests do we call that Ishvara. So that means that only in the light of the manifest is there Maya. Because if you never manifest, how do you know there's Maya? Think about that. If you never dream, remember dream is Ishvara. It's manifest. But if you never dream, if you never ever dream, will you ever know that you have the power of a dream? No. Because you haven't dreamt. You haven't dreamt. So only in the light of the dream, the creator, that is Ishvara, can I know there is a power in me, consciousness called Maya, which is unmanifest power. So let's revise this so we're absolutely clear. You, consciousness. Out of you, consciousness, comes a world, Jagat, called Ishvara. Before the world, that is Jagat, is manifest, what do we call that?
Maya.
Maya, good. So now, what is Maya? What are 2 expressions of Maya? At the intellectual level, Maya expresses itself as a film of doubt and hesitation. I am doubt, I don't know who I am, I don't know if this knowledge has fully stuck with me, or I'm hesitating to accept I am Brahman. That kind of doubt. In our understanding or experiencing of self, of you, within us. This expression of Maya is veiling power, avarana shakti. That means that avarana shakti is that power which in us, in consciousness, when I say us, I mean, you, consciousness. Maya is that power which veils, and it causes an individual to not misapprehend. What's the misapprehend is to make a mistake. Unapprehend, not to apprehend. What's the word? Non-apprehend, right? Non-apprehend. You clear? Non-apprehend something means what? I don't have any comprehension of what that is. I don't know what I don't know. Why? Because I'm veiled. So that means if I don't have no apprehension at all, veiling power, what happens? What's the result of that?
Ignorance.
Ignorance in the form of projection called misapprehension. Think about your experience. When you don't have a particular knowledge about anything, what happens? Automatically we project. There's no choice. We fill in the blanks because the mind's always trying to make sense of reality. So if the mind doesn't have the knowledge of reality, then it has no choice but to project onto reality called the jiva srishti its own ideas of what reality is. So that means non-apprehension equals misapprehension. Not knowing equals knowing, but in the light of the wrong knowledge. So, this expression of Maya is the veiling power, avarana shakti, which causes film of doubt and hesitation. Due to this mist of ignorance that envelops the intellect when it is unconscious of the supreme reality behind it. The mind starts projecting forth the world of the not self and creates two firm ideas that A, the world is true, and B, that I am nothing other than the projected world. Now, is your body excluded from the world? No? Good. So that means the self, under the influence of Maya, even misapprehends its own body. Because the body is not separate from the self, from the world. So it says here, I am nothing other than the projected world. Who's that I? Who's the I here? The jiva, the person who doesn't know, lack of knowledge. So that one is nothing other than that one. The jiva is nothing than the jiva. Because the jiva is not separate from the world. So that means when this projecting power is projecting onto the world its idea, it also projects onto itself. Therefore, the self gets covered by what? Vikshepa Shakti, projection. That means that under the influence of the wrong knowledge, that knowledge gets superimposed over the self, and then the self believes it is what? The body, mind, intellect. Therefore, when I say I, the I is referring to the body, mind, intellect. That's what a samsari is, an ignorant person. Whenever they say I, it's referring to the body, mind, intellect. Why? Because Maya is operating. And they haven't been educated about these two powers which they are unconsciously influenced by. That's why scientists are trying to discover the God particle. You know the God particle? The Higgs God particle? Billions of dollars of research goes into that. Why? Because even the scientist, the smartest scientist, is under the influence of Maya. Vikshepa Shakti and Avarana Shakti. Veiling, projecting. So they project onto the self, onto God, matter. And therefore they're trying to find matter, something that is visible. You see? So therefore projection causes all of these problems and erroneous notions about the world. All right, distinguish between the functions of the mind and intellect. We're going to get deeply into this more. Okay, we're gonna do this much detailed. Okay, what is the cause of Arjuna's delusionary attachments? Remember on the battlefield, Kurukshetra, Arjuna put his bow and arrow down and he couldn't fight. Why? The egocentric idea that he is conditioned by his own body, mind, and intellect is the true seed of Arjuna's delusionary attachments to his relations, and consequent deep compassion for that has risen in him to make him so impotent and helpless. Okay, to summarize this, where is compassion felt? in the body, in the mind. Arjuna is identified with his body and mind. And compassion is in the body and mind. So Arjuna is unable to what? Move forward, because Arjuna, under the wrong influence of who he is identified with the compassion and is what? Cannot move. Docile impotency. Why? Because this compassion for these Drona and his family on the other side is causing Arjuna to not to act, because Arjuna, even though is experiencing feelings of compassion, nothing wrong with that, is still unable to move forward. So what is Krishna trying to do? You are not your body, mind, intellect. Therefore, this compassion, which is stopping you, is not helpful. Because there's an army on the other side which is destroying everything, and you have to therefore put your compassion aside and do what you're being asked for, to fight. Remember, Arjuna is a part of you. Arjuna is not some person outside, because that's a dualistic phenomena. And so are the Kauravas. The Kauravas is that side of us that's greedy, wants more, wants material. The Pandavas is the side of us that is honest and compassionate and just loves. So that means we have to disidentify from both and have objectivity about the whole situation. Did you ever notice that? That's why we need a mediator for a relationship. When two couples, they're walking, they're unable to solve it themselves. Why? Because they're caught up in their own problem. So they need a third party to look at it from the outside, objective, to let them know what is the problem. That's what Arjuna, you needs to do in order to look at this problem. That's what inquiry means. Looking at it objectively without getting caught up in any view in particular. Because clarity.
For practical, you put your Krishna hat on.
That's right. That's right. Well, the Krishna hat is the intellect. You already have the Krishna hat. Yeah. You just have to turn your attention to it. Yeah. Okay. Misapprehension. Misapprehension means what? Without reading, we just discussed this. When I make a mistake, why do I make a mistake? When I make a mistake, what is that? Projecting, yeah. Yes. So when I make a mistake about Bob, and I make a wrong opinion about Bob, what am I doing? I am projecting my notions on... Why am I projecting? There has to be something before that caused me to project. There has to be an effect, a cause of projecting.
Ignorance.
Ignorance, which is veiling. That means I have to know... that means there is something that I don't know about Bob, and as a result of that, my tendencies are causing me to make a projection about Bob, because I have no choice. If I've thought about this face before, it's likely I'm going to think about this kind of character and face again. But if I gain knowledge on one hand, and then I see Bob, the same person, is misapprehension possible? No, no way. Because the veiling has been removed. So practically speaking, what does this mean in terms of removing our ignorance? Learning what Jagat is, what Ishvara is. That is, what is God? What is all of this? That makes it impossible then to then project wrong notions onto the world. So it's no wonder that we're projecting. We're innocent to it because we just don't know. If you don't know what you don't know, you have no choice but to project what you know. But what you know is not the truth. It's falsehood. So I am projecting falsehood onto the world, including myself as the body, mind, intellect. So get educated, step one. Step two, well, there is no step two because the problem is solved. Just get educated. Okay, so misapprehension of reality takes place due to non-apprehension of reality. Projecting happens due to ignorance. 10. The ego rises when the is not recognized. Yeah. When I, The real I, who you are, is not recognized. Now, why does the ego rise when the self is not recognized? How do we justify it? It's easy just to answer this, filling the blanks, but how do we justify this statement?
So I'd say the ego takes itself to be real first. It's probably the first problem.
Yeah, okay. Any other ideas?
You don't see yourself as the whole.
Good. Yeah.
So we're just we're very attached to our mind and body, and so
Right.
we see everything through that.
That's right. Okay, that's a good answer. So the ego, called the ahankara, which we will discuss in 2 or 3 weeks. Ahankara, what is the ego? The ego is that sense of I. Because think about it this way. The ego is a mechanism that you have to have. If you didn't have the ego, you couldn't distinguish between what you possess and what somebody else's possess. Is this my jumper or is this your jumper? I have no idea. Are these my thoughts or are these your thoughts? It will be a big problem. In fact, those who go to the psychiatry ward, they have this a distortion in the subtle body. So they cannot sometimes distinguish what is mine and what is yours. And just think about what a problem that would be. So that means the ego is that sense of ownership of I. The I ownership. These are my thoughts. These are my clothes. I am sitting here. I'm not sitting there. Why do I know that I'm sitting here and not there? Because of the ego. If I didn't have the ego, then there would be no sense of who owns these thoughts. Who owns this experience? Are you having this experience or am I having this experience? You see, so it will be a huge problem. So this ego is what gives birth to the I sense. This is where the confusion arises. When we say I, as a normal person, that I is pointing to the ego. And all of these experiences of the mind, the emotions, that is, and the thoughts, and the body, the gross body, all of that rests and it's owned by someone called ego. So that means if the ego isn't seen for what it is, it ends up, well, just causing problems. But the ego is seen as a simple mechanism to function in the world, then it's no problem at all. So this ego is, it gives rise when the self is not recognized, because it apparently veils the self. I said apparently, it doesn't actually veil the self, it apparently veils the self. And we will now discuss why it does that and how it operates. Okay, what is sin? What is sin?
Miss the mark.
Hey?
Missing the mark.
Missing the mark, yeah. What else is sin? Based on our own just idea or our own education.
Going against the Dharma principle you talked about
Yeah.
earlier.
Mm.
Going the other way.
Yeah.
Is our ignorance sin?
It's what?
Is our ignorance sin?
Is our ignorance, yeah. Causing impurity.
So
Okay.
Arjuna doesn't want to do his job, straying down the path of
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
incorrect function.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so without even reading this, so sin is identification with one of the personalities of a jiva. Either the physical personality, which always wants sensual pleasure, it wants to experience, it yearns by experiencing, touching, feeling, seeing, taking photos, you know, all those people in tour guides, all of that is appealing to the physical. It is the identification with the mind, totally emotional people, you know those two, they're just very emotional. It is identification with only the intellect, stuck in the head, just like dry, and one of those are operating at the expense or neglecting of the others. Because all of them are in combat, you could look at it that way. The physical wants its senses, the mind wants its emotions, the intellect wants its thoughts. So that means if I am identified with the intellect, I am neglecting the emotion. And guess what? I need emotion to feel empathy for another person. So therefore, sin is caused when I am identified with one of these factors, the intellect in this case, which ignores the component of emotion which is necessary to address and see the situation from another person's point of view. So therefore I am allowed under my ignorance to commit sin because the identification with one of these personalities is operating. If I am over-identified with the physical, this is your porn industry, then what happens? There's a total neglect of the person as a whole. So they're mistreated, they're even self-abuse happens. That is another sin. Why? Because the intellect capacity cannot say stop. What are you doing? Is this good? Because there's an over-identification with one of the personalities, allowing sin to play out. So what does this mean in practical speak? Address all of these, attend to all of these personalities equally. You see, we're not denying any of them because you do have a body, you do have a mind, you do have intellect, you do have higher, nobler goals, the spiritual goals. They have to be in balance. All right. What is the purpose of practice of rituals without reading? What is the purpose of practicing rituals? Karma kanda from the Vedas, like yoga, meditation.
Purify the mind.
Yeah.
Focus on compassion.
Good.
That helps to take in the knowledge, doesn't it? If you've calmed, so if you've done lots of those practices, if you need to do them.
Yeah, good.
Helps.
It helps,
So
yeah.
the mind's receptive.
Mm.
Better word.
Yeah, that sums it up. Those two answers are really it. I can't add anything to that. So the practice of rituals, karma kanda, makes the mind single-pointed when it is pursued without specific desires. Such a prepared mind alone is fit for steady contemplation of the Upanishadic revelations or declarations. So just to make that clear, the purpose of a ritual is to train the mind to single-pointedly focus on one topic. At this stage, it doesn't matter what topic, because the point is to train the mind to focus on one topic. Because when we put a book in front of us, or an opportunity to contemplate what we're listening to, then it profits us to have a mind that's able to stay with the contemplation. A mind that can contemplate for 20 minutes is a lot more, prone to success than a mind that can contemplate for 1 minute. It's common sense. So we're training to increase that 1 minute to the 20-minute mark, basically. So that means we cannot even throw out rituals. Yeah. Some of us are already coming here with a sharp mind. In that case, you don't have to necessarily perform. So it depends where you're at. We're just pointing out what needs to be done if it hasn't been addressed yet. Yeah. Okay, how does one always remain established in purity? Purity, that means a clean mind, without looking any ideas. How do we go about that? Always established in purity.
What comes to mind is always be thinking of the whole, or acting for the whole rather than
Yeah.
the jiva.
Good. That's a perfect answer. Because there's no way to cause any impurity if my mind's constantly about how are things dependent, how is everything dependent upon everything else. It's very easy to say, to discard somebody that I don't know. But if my understanding is everything is connected, then it's impossible to discard them in such a manner. Knowing that if I walk away, what's going to happen then? Well, I'm going to feel, guilty. I'm going to have a view about myself that contradicts my own good opinion about myself. And I'm going to have self-esteem issues. So that means thinking about the whole, it's very impossible to make a mistake, because knowing everything is always dependent. Think about it this way. A man in a Melbourne busy street playing the guitar, and he gets a few coins here and there. So some very happy chappie walks by and gives a $50 bill in the coffin, the case. Okay. And the guy is ecstatic. He says, "Oh my God, this is the best. I love this. Australia is awesome," because the guy just came from a different. He's never been to Australia. On his first day, he got $50, and he goes back to his family in Europe, Portugal, and his father, who owns a big company, asked him, "So how was the trip around the world?" And he says, "It was great, but you know what? The best country was Australia. Our first day I got $50. Every other country 20 cents, or a couple of dollars here and there. Australia is the best country in the world, or whatever country." The father hears this, and the father says, "Oh my God, we should move to Australia." And they do. The father moves to Australia and opens a company, employs 1,000 people. 1,000 people obviously are causing their families to sustain themselves, and tracing it all the way back to that one man putting a $50 bill, whether it was innocently or out of just compassion for the person. See how everything's connected? We have no idea how one little action has this multitude of generational effects. So that understanding that everything's interconnected causes us to always remain established in purity. So now let's see what it says. Sattva, the subtlest of the gunas, often becomes impure by its contact with attachments and consequent agitations, which is rajas, that's an agitated mind, that attack the intellect with delusion and grief, and veil it from the right cognition of the real nature of things, tamas, non-apprehension. To be always established in purity, sattva, this is the instruction, would therefore mean keeping ourselves least agitated and so at least deluded in our perceptions of things and beings, other animals, people, plants, and in our estimation of their true nature. Okay, it's a little, think about the whole, it sums it up. It's a nice way. But here what it's saying is sattva, which is the subtle body, subtle body is sattva. When these three energies in this context, rajas and tamas, which are always operating, when they are shining onto this pure reflector, which is said reflected consciousness, Gareth, onto this pure reflected consciousness, then they seemingly contaminate or cover this reflector with these energies of agitations and veiling. And when there is an agitation and veiling in the mind, in your mind, then guess what? We're not thinking about, as you said, Adrian, about the whole. So now the question is, you're probably going to say, what causes these three energies to shine in their combinations onto the subtle body? Because we just say they're shining, right? What determines which combination shines on your subtle body? What's the criteria for that?
Vasanas?
Hey?
Is it the vasanas?
Because look at it this way. Let's say my vasana is to be kind. I put my hands on the heart and I address the person like, hi. In order to do this, hi, Am I going to do this if I... What is this? Does this imply agitation? No. It implies calmness and respect. And for that, I need sattva. So if my tendency is to be kind, then my action is going to grossify, manifest as kindness, and that needs sattva. If my tendency similarly is rajas or tamas, then that would that not automatically modify your vasanas? Yeah. And that would automatically modify your how you deal with the world. So that means that vasanas need the help of these three gunas, because they can only fructify as a manifestation into the world by the combination of these three gunas. That means what? Practically speaking, like how do I use this in real life? Working on the vasanas. It always goes back to vasanas, because vasanas are the controlling principle which control your intellect, how I think, and the intellect controls the mind controls the prana, and the prana controls the physical body, which I was going to get to in this session, but it's a huge topic. I want to talk about the 5 koshas, the 5 layers, 5 sheets, and the purpose, my intention is to know what the 5 sheets are in every human being, so you can negate these 5 sheets and come to the understanding that there's no choice, that I am the self. So I was going to do that, but we're only up to 21. Okay, when is one said to have attained yoga? Patanjali talks about this, but this is Krishna from chapter 2, verse 58. And we sang it when we came here. We said, Shruti vipratipanate. Remember that? Okay. When is one said to have attained yoga? And what it says here is, when your intellect, perplexed by what you have heard where? In the scriptures, shall stand immovable and steady in the self, then you have attained self-realization. Now, what does this mean? Okay, so let's just say that you're firm. Self-knowledge is firm. I am firm knowledge. Now, let's say you are confronted by a very complex Upanishadic verse, and you're like, my God, this is like, I have no idea what this is saying. If from that moment on you go, oh, I don't know who I am, there's so much more information that I don't understand this, obviously I don't know who I am. If that is the case, then there is the self-knowledge is not firm. If you read the scriptures and all of these, tons of these Sanskrit verses and mantras and books, and you go, you know what, this is like great, I have no idea what it's saying, who these goddesses are, I have no idea what it's like, the analogy or the metaphor of the self that it's using totally doesn't make sense to me, but it doesn't touch me. It doesn't cause doubt and hesitation of who I am. If that's the case, then you shall attain self, then it's called you're self-realized. You have full knowledge of who you are. That means no scriptures, no alternative viewpoints, no Buddhism, no alternative schools, even though they sound great, can take you or sway you off your quote, your center, can take you off or cause doubt. So that's the advantage of moksha, is that despite these wonderful schools, they're great, but there's just no need to want to understand it, because you know who you are. And all of these complex formulas and equations, they're actually all pointing to the same thing. All right, I think we all got that. Yeah? Cool. Why should the senses be kept in control? We don't have to read this. Why should the senses, the physical senses, be kept in control, even after knowledge takes place?
They lead to extroversion.
Yeah.
For state.
Good, perfect answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Problem.
That's what the senses naturally do. That's how they thrive. They thrive by extroverting. That's just the nature of a body. So if, like I said at the beginning, if one just says, oh, I've got this, there's no problem. I've got everything I need, so just let it be. Just let the world roll. That's danger, because that one who's making that claim still has a body. And the body needs to thrive on what the body thrives on, which is sense input, conversations, the news, sense, like gratification. So that means if that is not kept intelligently under control, then there's a tendency by default to extrovert much more than the tendency to stay inwards and contemplate through nididhyasanam or manana of who I am or what is my nature. See the logic? Yeah. So that's just the way. It's just defaulted to externalize. If it wasn't, then we would all be born, and as from babyhood, we'll all be just meditating, going totally inwards. But that's not the case. We all go outwards. Yeah. All right, so that answers that one. So now let's change gear. How you guys going? Okay. Now, I thought there was two ways to approach this. The first way was to continue chapter 3 from the Gita, but I thought I'd give us a break. So just the last minute change today is to start to teach us about the 5 sheaths, which is going to help us understand who you means a person now, a jiva, who you are, so that you can negate all of these things, who you are as a person. You see? That's how the teaching works. You learn who you are as a person. Only then can we negate who we are actually not. Because the self is covered by these 5 sheaths. And the self-awareness thinks I am either the physical body, I am the vital air, which we'll talk about that now, the pranas. I am the feelings, I am the thoughts, or I am these habits. That's the usual way. So we have to learn in detail what are these 5 sheaths so we can negate them, and then what remains is the pure self, which you cannot negate. You cannot negate yourself. All right, and we're going to do this in picture format. Mind maps. Obviously, this will go on to the next week. There's no way to cover this today. Okay, let's start very simple. The 5 sheaths. Okay, so in the middle, we're looking at a circle now. We have, starting with the Om. The Om is a symbol of the self. Then we have a bliss sheath, and the intellectual sheath, mental sheath, vital air sheath, and food sheath. So they're just represented at concentric circles, and the important note to know here is the outermost circle is the least pervasive. Think about it that way. Or is the most gross, is the most physical. Think about it this way. This body, which is what? The food sheath. Food sheath means what? Food sheath means what is made out of food. Your body is nothing but food if you think about it. It's born from food, it's sustained by food, and it goes back to food for animals when it dies. That's why we call your body, your physical body, your food sheath. Now, how pervasive is your body? Not at all. I'll give you an example. Let's say your body is an ice cube, right? How pervasive is that ice cube just sitting here? Not at all. It's going to take on the form of an ice cube. The body takes on the form of a body. But what happens when I melt that ice cube? It turns into water. See, is water more pervasive than ice cube? In that case, the water would be the second circle, the vital air. It's a little bit more pervasive. Now, what happens when I boil the water? Steam. How pervasive is steam? A lot more pervasive than water, isn't it? So that means we now go even further into the circle. So that's what I mean. The more we go in the circle, the more pervasive it becomes. Now, what's in the center? The self. Tell me, where is consciousness not? Yeah, exactly. That means the most pervasive is obviously consciousness, which pervades everything. There is nothing that it cannot pervade. Because if you say it doesn't pervade something, how would you be able to tell that unless you're using consciousness to say about that? That means you're even pervading the unpervaded. That means you cannot get out of consciousness. And if you say, I got out of consciousness, I will simply ask you, how do you know that, please? And you will say, well, because I was aware of this idea of going out of consciousness. Oh, really? So you had to use what? Awareness/consciousness to be aware of that idea. That means consciousness pervaded that idea. There is no place where consciousness is not. All right. The other point to know about this circle is the more in it goes, the harder it is to be speaking about it. The harder it is to be accurate in terms of describing it. Can you describe consciousness? No way. Impossible. Even saying consciousness, it's just a word, it's just a couple of letters. What does that say? But how about this? How about we go to the fruit sheath? How easy is it to speak about your body? Huh? And how often do we speak about our bodies, right? Oh, my nose, I'm blowing my nose. Oh, my ears are sore. Oh, my back is sore. Oh, my head hurts. Oh, my hand. Oh, my arm. My arm is like, swollen. Constantly we talk about, and very accurately. We don't ever mistake our arm for our foot, do we? We're very accurate with the outermost circle, the fruit sheath. But now, watch this. What happens when we get to the vital air sheath? The vital air, the prana, which, let's just take digestion. That's part of the vital air. How often do you talk about your circulation, about your digestion, about your excretion? How often do you speak about that? Not as often as we speak about the outermost layer. And even then it becomes much harder to speak about the vital air. Because is it really my digestion that's the problem? Or is it just a poor circulation? Or is it just a problem with excretion like diarrhea? How do I know? So it becomes a little bit harder to be accurate in terms of our words. Now, what happens when you go to the mind? That's the mind. That's the next sheath, the mental sheath. Men would probably, well, actually not necessarily, it's probably judging, but okay. You're smiling, you probably know where I'm going to go with this. When we talk about feelings, it becomes, how do you know you're actually feeling the way you're feeling? When somebody asks you, how do you feel? How do you know you're actually saying an accurate word that 100% represents the exact feeling that's occurring in the mind? Yeah. And not only that, but your words, your vocabulary is also limiting us from accurately describing our mental sheath. If you have an English speaker who just knows good and bad, how are you feeling? Good. How are you feeling? Bad. That's it. So even that is being limited by the language alone. But it becomes much harder to speak about our minds. And the mind is also your memories. How do you know if it's a thought or if it's a memory? So the more we go inwards, the harder it is to be accurate whether it's really the case or to describe the experience of the circle that we're talking about. Now, what about intellectual sheath? The intellect, thoughts. Now, you're probably going to say, that's very easy, Andre. You just say, I'm thinking about football. What's the problem with that? That's not what we're speaking, even though it's part of the intellectual sheath. But why would the intellectual sheath be even harder to speak about? When you have a thought of football, how many other thoughts that went on that you have no idea in the background, which as a result of those sub-thoughts created or resulted in football? Yeah, hundreds of thoughts. Even just being in the right place, there could be even a poster of a football person, and I'm completely oblivious to it, and I just saw it on the corner of my eye, and that influenced my thoughts to say football. See, we only know about a thought that is in the moment, but we don't know about all of these hundreds of thoughts, a thread that went on to create that thought. So that means it's even harder to really be accurate when speaking about our true thoughts. Now, how about the bliss sheath? Now we're at the causal body. The causal body is the bliss sheath. The causal body is the bliss sheath. It's the body that causes tendencies. That's what the causal body means. It's tendencies which or cause you to be the way that you are as a person. Think about it this way. First of all, there's a special line here, and this is the subtle body, and that's the causal body. The causal body is completely inaccessible to the subtle body because the causal body causes the subtle body to reflect or to create an experience of the world. See, if my tendencies in the causal body is to see the world in a positive light, that's going to be my experience, isn't it? A world of positive light. But how do I know what caused me to see the world in a positive way? You don't. There's no way. You just think, oh, it's just my thought. But what caused that thought to be in that moment occurring? Oh, it's just, see, even speaking about the causal body right now, this body is affected by it. You know why? Because why am I speaking the way I'm speaking? Because my tendencies, how to speak, are causing this body to speak the way it speaks. Even if I point, you could have an Indian guy who's going to be like, over here, or some kind of, different act. So even the way you're acting is a result or is a cause of the causal body. So there is no way you can know your causal body. Because even trying to know about the causal body, even the way you're trying to know about the causal body is caused by the causal body.
So you can really only experience the after effect, is that?
In after effects, that's right. So that means the after effects, because the causal body is unmanifest vasana, unmanifest samskara. That means, what does unmanifest samskara mean? It's not yet fructified in real life.
That's all the sun, she said, karma. It's there.
Yeah, it's there, but it's not. But we don't know it.
Yeah.
See, it's not until a situation comes in real life and I'm confronted by, let's say, an angry person, only then do I know what my samskaras are to dealing with an angry person. Before, in the class, when everyone's nice, I have no idea.
Now, is that what's manifested in the subtle body?
That's right, perfect. So the causal body is unmanifest. When the situation in the real world arises, then that is unmanifest, manifested in the subtle body. Yeah, so causal body, unmanifest. When it's manifest in the subtle body. And the subtle body, of course, controls the gross body. So it's just a whole package. So that means the vasana is nothing but a controlling principle which grossifies our actions in every moment. Think about the way you're sitting. Why are you sitting the way you're sitting right now? You see, you didn't even think about that. Because your causal body, your tendencies are causing you to sit in the way that you're sitting. Why are you listening the way that you're listening? Some of us write notes, some of us just listen, some of us shake our heads, some of us don't shake our heads. Do you think about that? No. You just experience that. Why? Because it is a constant unmanifest to the manifest. You see, you don't shake your head until I say, you don't nod until I ask you, is that correct? Only then you nod. That's what we mean. Unmanifest as situation arises, only then you know what's stored in the vasanas as a form of yes.
And if you're looking for evidence of the unmanifest, you've really just laid it out.
Yeah, you can look at, simple. You can look at your behavior in terms of, that's why it's helpful to be sometimes in a relationship also, because it's an opportunity to provoke these tendencies and to see what's really stored there. Yeah. So, and also real life, dealing with real life people, just being in the real world, it helps a lot because it's easy to be in a cave and just meditate. It doesn't fix the vasanas, they're just dormant. They're just sitting unmanifest, completely fine. But as soon as another sannyasin comes over, goes, can I share your cave space, please? It's like, no, get out, get out. You see, so it doesn't help us much to not do anything. Okay, now, the bliss sheath, we're still in the bliss sheath, called the causal body, is only experienced in deep sleep. What? I don't experience anything in deep sleep. What do we say about the concentric circles that we go inwards? It gets more subtle and more pervasive. Is your physical body there in deep sleep? Do you have, no. From the standpoint of deep sleep, do you have a physical body? See, it's only from the standpoint, from the waker, can you say, yes, I have a physical body. But in deep sleep, you got nothing. Is there digestion, an idea of digestion in your deep sleep? Nah, no way. Is there emotions or intellect? Nothing. There's just nothing in deep sleep. But tell me this. How do you feel in deep sleep? Like, what is deep sleep generally? At least, inference afterwards we wake. What do we say about deep sleep?
It was good.
It was good. It was blissful. That's why we don't want to be awoken from deep sleep. Some of us who are sharing space with a partner prefer to stay in a different bed just to preserve our sense of, increase our chances of peace. So we know inherently that this piece called the bliss sheath is there. So that means this bliss sheath is there in deep sleep, but all of the 4 concentric circles, the intellect, mental, vital, air, and food are not there. That means that the bliss sheath, the causal, is more pervasive than the previous 4. Now, one point. When I say bliss sheath, I'm not talking about Ananda from Satchitananda. This is not bliss of self. This is bliss of no experience. It's still an experience. It's got nothing to do with awareness. Because you just told me that, Tony?
John.
Huh?
John.
That sleep was good. Huh? So isn't that funny? None of us have any experience in the sleep, but we can all say that sleep is good. How is that possible if we're not there in deep sleep? And we all agree that sleep is great, it's blissful. How do we know that if we're not there in deep sleep? So that means there has to be something that survives deep sleep. And what is that survives, that bliss, that good of deep sleep? Awareness. Now, is that awareness the good, as you said, or not? Is awareness the bliss of sleep or not? No? Good. Because the bliss belongs to what? The bliss sheath. That means every time you experience joy, get a promotion or a new relation or whatever it is, that joy is coming from the bliss sheath. That's where it's stored. That's why there is nothing but bliss in deep sleep. So that means when you experience joy in this waking state, we actually call this, you are, just trying to get the right word, you are awake, you are awake while sleeping. Kids experience this a lot. They're just, constantly happy. And so they're, because see, they don't have so much stuff in these other sheaths. So they're constantly, this bliss is constantly just pouring into their beings. That's why they're just always joyful. So as you, going back to a very good point, when you say good, so what knows that it's good? What principle knows that it's good? The inner circle, the most inner circle. That which pervades even through the goodness, through the bliss. That's why it's able to say the sleep was good. The bliss was, sleep was just awesome. Because it pervades even the causal body. So that means the innermost is the most pervasive. All right. So, revision. Food sheath. It's not a very good chart, so I'm just going to use this one. Food sheath, vital air sheath, mental sheath, intellectual sheath, bliss sheath, and then Om at the top. And we have the same principle as here. We have the causal body, the subtle body, which is the vital air. I don't know why they put the subtle body. They include, okay, so prana is part of the, no, vital air. This is not part of the subtle body. This is part of the gross body. So prana, your digestion, your circulation, that's part of the physical body. I've got to find out what's the logic behind including the vital air sheath as a subtle body. Okay, but we get the idea. Okay, so how are these 5 sheaths originated? Who created this? Well, obviously, who else than the rishis, who have nothing to do other than to contemplate about experience of reality. So it's based on the analysis of their experience, and it maps the structure of a human, that is a jiva, a person, personality. And he basically divides this into, we'll just categorize for simplicity. You have the Atman, that is same as Brahman, Supreme Self, and the 5 layers, or koshas, it's actually called koshaha, but we put sandhi, it's koshas. So these 5 koshas are matter. That means even your causal body is matter. The only thing that's not matter is the self, consciousness. Now, of course, later on I'm going to say that, like, what do you mean? That's dualistic way of thinking. Matter, non-matter. It's just consciousness. But for the sake of explaining this, I'm just going to categorize it as consciousness or self and not self, the 5 layers. And they are apparently covering the Atman, apparently covering that innermost circle. Not actually, but apparently. So there is no real contact between Atman and these koshas. And the analogy we use is just like a person who wears 5 layers of clothing. Yeah? And so what gives sentiency to these 5 layers of clothing? What makes them move? What gives them life? The person wearing the 5 layers of clothing. That means these 5 layers are like these koshas, and they are given sentiency by you. You meaning capital Y-O-U, meaning consciousness. That means you, consciousness, gives sentiency to these 5 layers, which we will analyze next week, when consciousness, you pervade these 5 layers, koshas. So just like an analogy here is, if you put a sword in a sword pouch, it looks like the sword pouch is covering the sword. But it's not actually true, because if it was, the pouch would get cut and the sword would get blunt. So it's not, it looks like it's, but it's not actually covering. So next week, what we would do is analyze these 5 personalities using picture formats, good for memory, into incredible detail, and also describe the difference between the mind and the intellect, which I promised when we were going through that sheet, to give us a really good idea who we are not. Yeah. Okay, let's close. And then we can ask questions or have a conversation. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. It starts to get a little bit of a problem to speak in categories like first you got the self, and then you got time and space, and then to accommodate the objects, then you got the objects, and then you've got, you know, the jivas. It doesn't work like that. I'll give you proof. When you begin to dream, when you're in a dream, tell me this, did you see the dream appear little by little, or did you suddenly find yourself right in the middle of an already complete creation? The latter, of course. You see, when the dream, and this is another dream called, you know, the waking state, when the dream appears, you're just right in the middle of it. There is no such thing as layers or categories or first the mind and then the intellect. It's all one experience, absolutely in the now. But that's not good enough for the mind, so that's why we break it down into very easy to understand categories. And then, as we say, Vedanta is a throwaway. When you've understood the knowledge, then you throw this away because it's not necessary. It did its job. It caused the understanding everything is actually here, now. Everything is consciousness. So it did its job. So what's the point of holding on to these stupid words? It's just words, right? Okay, good question. Yeah. So the category has to slowly start coming away, and also it's expressed in language. You know how we speak. So, yeah, I'm also mindful of my own language more and more because to remove possible, you know, problems. Yeah.
The bliss, to me, when you were describing it, the bliss, it felt to me like you were talking about the unconscious.
Yeah, we call it, yeah, that's a very good point. We call it the subconscious. Yeah. But the unconscious is also good. Yeah. In fact, the Western world is just you know, put this as unconscious. Yeah, very simple. You just don't have access to it. Only when it's fructified in the real life. Yeah. Very good point.
But in psychology terms, they some would
100% accurate.
The job is to make the unconscious conscious.
That's right.
So it seems similar.
Yeah. Like you got, you know, Carl Jung, you know, he'll get into his material, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We can compare that to the 4 shastras, the 4, you know, purposes of life. It's very similar. It's in certain schools, if you want me to go over that. But yes, the answer is the unconscious. Yeah. I just want to make a little point. We don't use these words. As a teacher, my job, it's my necessity to stick with the right words to continue this paramparam, this lineage. Yeah. Okay.
So are there difficulties when obviously it's easy to see the first 3 or 4 sheaths? Is there difficulties arise distinguishing between the bliss sheath and real consciousness?
Clarified?
Difficulties arise.
Yeah.
Clearly distinguishing between the 2.
Between what? Between
bliss
and
consciousness.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, good. I mean, at the same time, no, because see, bliss is another experience, isn't it? See, when we say Satchitananda, that bliss is got nothing to do with experience, because you need a body to feel that bliss. But that implies what? I'm the body if I mistake that bliss for me. That means I'm mistaking me, awareness, for the body. So the way simple out of that one is just to say, okay, how is it like, what, you tell me how do I get out of this one? If I'm bliss, there's bliss. How do I get out of it now to discriminate from myself as consciousness? How would, yeah. How do you get out of that? Because it's an inquiry. It happens all the time. We get bliss in yoga, samadhi, and we go, oh, this is the bliss of the self. I say no. How do you justify the answer no?
Sleep.
Huh?
Sleep.
What about sleep?
Well, I'm trying to work through it.
Okay, cool.
But I like I understood that everybody likes sleep.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of bliss in the waking state for some people.
Yeah.
Clearly people mistake being blissed out continually in the waking state as
Yeah.
the self, but it gets back to your first point, which is who's aware of all that.
That's right. That's the answer. Who's aware of this bliss? So there is bliss, but if you objectify this bliss, there's a silent witness. There's an unverbalized, untouchable, ungraspable silent witness, a background prior to this bliss. You see, you have to have some principle that pervades this experience for this experience to be successfully and accurately identified as bliss. That's how you know. So the answer is.
And yet remain separate from it. That's the key point, isn't it?
Yes, and discriminating. Discriminating, that means, but see, you don't have to go, oh, not me. You just have to know who you are. Yeah, so that's why it's so simple. You just have to know who you are, and automatically, whatever experience occurs, anatma, not self, you don't have to go, oh, is that me? Let me just go through my checklist. Okay, I'm aware of this. No, make it ticked. No, you just have to know who you are as that witness of whatever experience, which you cannot even objectify that witness, because even the witness is known to be a witness. That's why I say you cannot objectify yourself. You cannot objectify consciousness, because trying to objectify consciousness, there is an awareness of trying to objectify consciousness, which is also aware. There's an awareness of awareness trying to objectify consciousness. You see? You can't, every time you try to grasp it, it's always one step prior. Huh? And even if you go, oh, who's the witness? Let me get to the witness. Let me identify myself. Oh, I am the witness. You objectified it. But how do you know that it was objectified? Because the actual consciousness never got touched. So that means the only solution is to accept. I am that. What other choice do you have? But see, we don't want to accept it. Why? Because we still have a few notions which we have to remove. That's the only purpose of Vedanta. Not to teach you anything, just to remove these two powers, avarana and vikshapa, causing doubt and hesitation. Yeah, because you don't have to do anything to be who you already are right now. You don't have to do anything to be alert and aware, do you? Even if you say, I'm very tired right now, I would just say, how do you know that you're tired? There's just no way out of it. Right? So it's just staying in that silent witness, the ungraspable, unverbalized, that's you. You can't verbalize. As soon as you verbalize it, there's a knowing that it was verbalized. Yeah. Very simple, actually.